Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have ourselves another Hiya Toys release. We have another Godzilla King of the Monsters Hiya Toys release. This is Rodan, and this is particularly exciting for me because it's my very first chance to check out a Hiya Toys figure that is not Godzilla specifically, as that's only what I have in my collection so far. And the box art looks pretty cool, and from what I can tell, the figure itself is really quite nice. You've got some images here on the front of the box of it and everything. Bit of a different look considering it is Rodan because the box is thin and just sort of tall. And then here on the back you have another shot of Rodan, also a little damage to my box, thank you Amazon. But again, the figure looks pretty fun, so let's pop this box open and check it out. So here is the stand that we have for our Rodan, which looks pretty cool. I like that it's just a nice clear. Wouldn't have been too bad to have like an actual base or something to include with it, but it still looks pretty cool. And then we also, of course, have our Rodan itself. And straight out of the box, I think one of the things I'm most impressed with is the size. I did not realize that this Rodan was as large as it is, so I'm kind of almost in a state of awe when it comes to the massive size of this one right out of the box. Again, my son, who is a major Godzilla collector, has the older NECA release, and I was kind of expecting it to be similar in size to the NECA version, but it is definitely a very, very large Rodan figure. The sculpt looks fantastic. I can also say that as I kind of look over the figure for the first time here with you guys. The sculpt does look really good. The paintwork is okay. It's not really, incredible. It's definitely not the type of paint that I'm going to rave about like we had with the King of the Monsters Godzilla, but it still looks pretty decent for what it is. So as always, let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at this and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of Rodan, I think they absolutely have captured the likeness of Rodan quite nicely from King of the Monsters. You can see all the texturing looks pretty good, and the paintwork overall looks decent. They've basically just given it kind of like a fiery kind of orange tone and then dry brushed over a lot of the detail, and that's pretty much the extent of what the paintwork is through the figure. You can see again we pretty much have that going on. Of course, here in the face, the beak looks quite nice. We have an articulated jaw, I think, if I can get a hold of it. There we go. Yes, we absolutely do. Let me see how high or wide I can get that open. There we can see inside the mouth. You've got the tongue sculpted out in there. If my camera will focus on it, there you go. You can see a lighter tone there for the tongue, which looks pretty good. Definitely decent looking in there. And I think that's about as wide. Yeah, maybe we can get about that wide as far as that mouth goes to opening. It seems to work pretty nicely. We also have the crests on the back of the head of our Rodan, as well as, again, some decent looking detail and paintwork up here on the top of the head. I think that actually looks really quite nice. I don't know what it is about that area, but that's probably some of the nicest looking paintwork I think I see on the figure as a whole. Moving down the neck, you can see we've got a few joints of articulation as we move down. It looks like we've got 3 overall moving down, and that does give us some nice mobility in the head and neck of our Rodan. Some nice turns in the neck. Decent turns. Up and down and stuff like that. So that does look pretty good. And again, that definitely helps to give you some very nice posability in the neck and head. And you can also swivel these parts so you can get a tilt in the head and neck of Rodan as well, which is definitely nice. I'd imagine you can definitely could swivel all the way. So that looks pretty decent. As you move back into the neck, we continue to have that same type of skin texture, same type of paintwork, again with the kind of orangish tones and then the black that's dry brushed over. We've got the throat on the underside of Rodan also nicely sculpted. Leading down into the chest, you can see how Rodan is pretty much portrayed as a very armored pterosaur-ish type of a kaiju in this film, and you can really see that as his entire body and texturing is pretty much just like large scoop-like scales all over the figure. As you move down, you do have another area of articulation here in the midsection. We have a little area of like a midsection joint, which is a little stiff. We basically have nice movement up and down, which you can see right there. Side to side, it kind of goes, but then pops right back, so it doesn't really articulate too great in that direction. But as you lead out into the wings have absolutely phenomenal looking skin texture. And again, the paintwork looks pretty good. I think it looks quite nice as you move along this upper area of the wing. Looks a little bit iffy as you move out here just because the dry brushing doesn't seem super consistent, but I mean, it's decent for what it is. And I love how they've sculpted out the edges of the wings where you can see all of the imperfections moving along, making it look very lifelike overall. I really do quite like that. And then as you move up here, of course, you have the hands of Rodan. The nails have a nice, genuine, sharp look to them. They are painted, and they do have a gloss coat for the nails, which you can hopefully see there. They're kind of basically all just that same black, but I would imagine, again, the nails of Rodan would be black, and the fact that they do have a bit of a glossy look for the nails is nice. As we move over here to the opposing wing, again, you're going to see pretty much the same thing. The sculpt and detail looks really, really nice, very crisp on the figure as a whole, and also, again, nicely painted. Not absolutely incredible, like it's not paintwork that's blowing my mind, but for what it is, it does look really good. And you also, of course, have joints in the wings. It's about as far down, honestly, as it seems to go, and then up. These can also swivel, but it just doesn't have a massive amount of mobility. But I believe the wings are a wire, so you can kind of bend them to give you more posability for the wings. I hope they're wire anyway, because I just bent it, but I'm pretty sure that I read that they were wire. And then as you move down into the legs, again, you've got some more. If my camera would just focus, really does not like this Rodan. You have some more nice looking detail. Again, more of those scoot-like scales as you move down. And obviously we lead down into the feet. We've got scoots running down the tips of the toes, or the tops of the toes, all the way down into those really cool nails that we have here. Again, nice long nails painted with a black, and we have quite a bit of articulation moving down through the legs yet again. You've got the hip articulation right here, which can go forward and back quite nicely. It doesn't come out away from the body, unfortunately. It kind of swivels. And then you've also got knee articulation, which go to the side here. You can see knee articulation right there. That can also swivel. And then you have ankle articulation as well, which I don't know if it's going to let me show you that. There you go. You can see forward and back. Very nice. And also can swivel. So pretty decent articulation, especially in the legs of our Rodan. And then we also have the tail out here, and the tail looks quite nice as far as the sculpt goes. Same deal for the paint. The paint is pretty consistent through the entire figure as far as the way it appears. It looks pretty much the same way everywhere for the most part. And you also have a little articulation here in the tail as you can swivel that, and also go up and down a little bit there. You can see how it can move that direction as well. And then if we take a look here at the top of our Rodan, again, it all looks pretty much the same as far as the paintwork. It doesn't seem like the tones differ anywhere. We primarily just have that orangish tone and then the black dry brushing over top. I'm trying to see if I notice any variation of color, but I'm really not picking up on it. But again, the paintwork does look good, and Rodan in the film doesn't really have much when it comes to variation of color, so I feel like they have captured the overall likeness of Rodan pretty decently. And again, the wings look so nice up here on the top. You could just see how absolutely crisp the detail is throughout. Again, the same detail as you move through the course of the back. Again, the fine detail is fantastic on this. The sculpt is honestly out of this world when it comes to a Rodan. And then, of course, the paintwork is definitely not bad. It really isn't. It's quite nicely done, just not anything, again, to rave about. But overall, it is a very cool looking Rodan.
Now, as far as the size goes, we've basically just placed our Rodan back there against our backdrop, and we're going to go ahead and get a wingspan for a length. We're looking at about 15.5 inches. Yeah, roughly about 15.5 inches, or around 13.5 centimeters. And if you go for a height from the tail to the beak, a little over 5 inches, or around 13 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Hiya Toys Rodan, and you very clearly can see it is a large figure, no doubt about that. And I will say one thing I really like about the stand. You can see I've actually removed a few sections of it, so these actually pop apart. So you can basically make it as tall as you want or as short as you want, which is really cool. And I actually really quite like that. You can have your Rodan soaring really high, or you can have it lower to the ground like this. But again, you can see the size is very impressive. And then for another comparison, and probably the comparison most people would want to see, we have the King of the Monsters Godzilla from Hiya Toys next to the King of the Monsters Rodan from Hiya Toys. And you can see, especially if we turn the Rodan sideways, how incredibly huge the Rodan is. So obviously quite large in comparison even to our Godzilla, which is a pretty big figure. Again, I really feel like it is a very nicely sized Rodan, and definitely the largest one that I have in my collection. Also the largest that I would say even my son has, which he has quite a few, you know, like the actual toy line from the King of the Monsters, and of course the NECA version and stuff. He's got all of those, and this is still bigger than all of those. And then here we have the NECA version of the Rodan next to our Hiya Toys version. Now you can see right here from this visual, it doesn't look like the size is all that different. And obviously the NECA version does have a decent size to it, but if we actually take the Hiya Toys version off of the stand and we bring them in and compare them next to each other, you can really see now, I think, how much larger the Hiya Toys version is compared to the NECA version. There's a massive difference here in size between these two. I will say, honestly, I kind of feel like I prefer the NECA version when it comes to the paint apps over the Hiya Toys version, and that's really weird. Hard to say something like that because I don't often expect NECA to win any battles against Hiya Toys, but I just feel like the paint apps of the NECA version are severely underrated. It is definitely a nicely painted figure. But again, the size is obviously pretty drastic between these two, and the Hiya Toys version is clearly significantly larger. And then for one final comparison, we also have one of the Playmates Godzillas from the new Godzilla X Kong line next to our Rodan from Hiya Toys, and you can get a basic idea what the size difference is between these two as well. So this Hiya Toys Godzilla King of the Monsters, legendary of course, Rodan is absolutely a beautiful figure. It's not the greatest figure in the world, and I don't think it quite can compete with the quality of the Godzilla from King of the Monsters, but it is still nicely done. The sculpt specifically is phenomenal. It absolutely sports one of the most beautiful Rodan sculpts I've ever seen, especially when it comes to the legendary version. The figure really has an extremely highly detailed and an extremely crisp detailing on it. The paintwork isn't that great, but it's okay. You know, it looks good for what it is. It's just not like overly impressive, and the paintwork is for the most part nicely applied. I just would have liked to have seen maybe at least a little variation of color, because it's basically just the orange tone with a dry brushing over it, and that's about it. You know, you have a little bit of maybe black glossy paint for the nails, but not much else outside of that. However, it does still look really quite nice, and they actually have a new paint variant coming for this Rodan. I think it's the same sculpt. I could be wrong. I'll have to look into that a little more. But I know they have a different paint variant coming out, which I think looks a little cooler than this one. The articulation is also pretty nice. It's not absolutely incredible either, and the wing articulation specifically is a little limited, but for the most part, the articulation is pretty smooth, works nicely. The head and neck specifically, I think, work great. And I'm not really having too many issues as far as articulating the figure. The midsection doesn't work perfectly, but overall, the articulation I'm pretty happy with. But it is still nicely articulated. And the wings, you know, being a wire and allowing them to fold, even though it doesn't work perfectly, kind of just, you know, every time I fold it, it sort of bends back into place pretty much on its own over time, but that's still pretty cool as well. So again, it's not the most incredible figure in the world, and I definitely like the Godzilla from the King of the Monsters line better, but it is still a pretty cool Rodan. So if you are interested in picking one up, I will include a link in the description. I think probably to Big Bad Toy Store For this, maybe I'll include the link to Amazon as well. I really do prefer purchasing them from Big Bad Toy Store. I think a little more because they are better at packaging them and, you know, sending them off a little safer than Amazon. Most of the time when I get stuff from Amazon, it ends up being damaged. But again, check the links in the description. Grab this Rodan if you are interested, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.